In our headlines on this Friday afternoon, May 19th, here in South Korea. The Group of 7 summit is underway in Hiroshima, with this year's gathering extended to include 8 outreach nations, including South Korea, as global leaders seek to tackle broader security challenges. Meanwhile, Seoul is slated to send its team of inspectors to assess Tokyo's planned discharge of radioactive wastewater from the Fukushima nuclear power plant on May 21st for a week-long mission. And 2 sets of Korea's historical documents related to the April 19 revolution and the Donghak Peace Revolution in the late Joseon dynasty are added onto UNESCO's Memory of the World Register. We start over in neighboring Japan, where the G7 summit is underway. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida welcomed his counterparts within the Group of 7 at the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park earlier this morning. The park commemorates victims of the atomic bomb that targeted the city during World War II and includes the structures of the few buildings that withstood the explosion. This year's G7 gathering includes 8 other invited guest nations, including South Korea, whose leaders are scheduled to visit the park on Sunday. And as I just mentioned, President Yoon Suk-yeol is attending the event this year as an outreach member of the Group of 7 amid shared concerns regarding fundamental global challenges. Our Shin Se-byuk covers the agenda ahead.
South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol will fly over to Hiroshima on Friday for the G7 summit. He will be the 4th South Korean leader to participate in the multilateral event. The total of 9 sessions will start on Friday with a discussion about the global economy over a working lunch, and in the afternoon, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky joining virtually. Indo-Pacific-related issues, most likely centered around Chinese issues, along with nuclear disarmament, are also expected over a working dinner. On Saturday, economic security talks in the morning will be followed by expanded sessions with 8 invited countries, including South Korea, India, and Australia. The talks will cover 2 themes: food, public health, development, and gender, and climate change and energy security, where Yoon is to share his views on. On the final day, an event for invited leaders and a session on peace, stability, and prosperity will precede the closing ceremony. President Yoon will be returning to Seoul on Sunday. Meanwhile, during the 3-day summit, Yoon is set to have one-on-one meetings with 6 government leaders. Those include talks with Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida on Sunday. The 2 leaders are also scheduled to make a joint visit to a monument honoring Korean victims of the 1945 atomic bomb that wrecked Hiroshima. The highly anticipated trilateral summit between Yoon, Kishida, and U.S. President Joe Biden has not been announced yet. However, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan on Wednesday said that 3 leaders are eager to meet and that it's a matter of scheduling, while mentioning Biden has a packed schedule. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Right, staying in Japan, amid efforts to ensure a trilateral summit among the leaders of South Korea, the U.S. and Japan on the margins of the G7 meeting, much optimism has been shared about the advances thus far in rapprochement between Seoul and Tokyo. Our Moon Hye-ryun reports.
South Korea and Japan are expected to continue mending ties at the G7 summit this Friday through Sunday in Hiroshima. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida met with U.S. President Joe Biden on Thursday ahead of the G7 summit, where he said he will continue to work towards improving South Korea-Japan relations. Biden responded that he welcomes news of the 2 nations strengthening ties. This comes after Kishida extended an invitation to South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol to be a guest at the summit of the Group of 7. Earlier this month, the 2 leaders held a summit in Seoul. Ahead of the G7, Kishida and Biden also discussed ways to strengthen their trilateral relations with South Korea regarding North Korea's nuclear threat and China's growing assertiveness. Nuclear issues are likely to figure prominently at the G7 summit, whose host city Hiroshima was devastated by an atomic bomb at the end of World War II. Seoul, Tokyo, and Washington have a 3-way summit scheduled on the sidelines, where the 3 nations are likely to discuss North Korea's growing missile threat as well as deterrence measures. The United States has welcomed recent efforts by South Korea and Japan to improve relations, as North Korea's increasing long-range missile capabilities are regarded as not only a threat to South Korea and Japan's security, but also to the U.S. mainland. Seoul and Tokyo are also concerned about potential security threats that may arise from a potential conflict between China and Taiwan, while the United States is looking to counter China's growing global influence. 문혜련, Arirang News.
Seoul, meanwhile, is sending its own group of inspectors to assess Tokyo's planned discharge of its Fukushima radioactive wastewater. The delegation will depart on Sunday for a roughly week-long mission. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji has more.
A team of 21 South Korean experts will be sent to Japan to conduct an on-site inspection before the planned release of radioactive water from the Fukushima nuclear power plant. The group will be in Japan for 6 days starting Sunday. Announcing the details of the plan, the South Korean government said the team aims to gather information that's needed to ensure the health and safety of the Korean public.
Through the inspection, we will verify Japan's water purification and discharge facilities for ourselves, as well as its ability to analyze radioactive material. We will also gather information needed for scientific and technological research.
On the first day, the 21-member team will hold a meeting with related Japanese organizations, including the Tokyo Electric Power Company, Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, and Japan's Nuclear Regulation Authority. From May 23rd to 24th, they will inspect the facilities at the Fukushima nuclear power plant. And on the last day, the 25th, they will hold an in-depth discussion with the Japanese organizations, based on the information gathered from the on-site inspection. This mission comes after South Korean President Yoon and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida agreed during their summit on May 7th to allow South Korean experts to visit Fukushima and conduct an inspection separately from the one currently being carried out by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Earlier in January, Japan announced it will release over 1 million tons of water from its destroyed power plant into the Pacific Ocean within this year, after treatment using what's called the ALPS system. The Japanese government claims this removes most of the radioactive contamination, with the exception of tritium, but this raised strong concerns from South Korea and other nearby countries. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
Archives linked to Korea's democracy have been listed onto UNESCO's Memory of the World Register, which seeks to protect the world's documentary heritage. Our Lee Seung-jae has details.
The April 19th revolution led to the resignation of President Syngman Rhee and became a cornerstone for the development of democracy in South Korea. And long before this movement, the Dongguk Peasant Revolution in the late Joseon dynasty fought against corrupt leadership and foreign aggression. Both events were integral in South Korea's push to achieve democracy. To mark the significance of the two movements, UNESCO on Thursday added South Korea's archival records related to the two grassroots revolutions to UNESCO's Memory of the World Register. According to the Cultural Heritage Administration, the archives of the April 19th revolution included over 1,000 materials related to the 1960 civil uprising that ended the dictatorship of South Korea's first president in 1960. The documents show the causes and development of the revolution and are made up of materials from government agencies, the National Assembly, and political parties, as well as media articles, personal records, investigative reports, photographs, and videos. And the archives of the Dongguk Peasant Revolution consist of a total of 185 documents related to the uprising against the corruption within the ruling class and the fight against the Japanese presence in Korea. The civil movement consisted of an armed rebellion led by peasants and followers of the Dongguk religion during the Joseon dynasty. The latest edition brings the total of South Korea's heritage items on the UNESCO list to 18, and the first since 2017, when a royal seal, an investiture book collection from the Joseon dynasty, the archives of the National Debt Redemption Movement, and Joseon Tongshinsa, which consist of diplomatic records of Korean envoys to Japan, were all added to the UNESCO list. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And moving on to the latest, with regard to Kremlin's hostile policy in Eastern Europe, a series of Russian missile assaults have been averted by Ukraine's air defense in recent days. Our Yoon reports.
Early Thursday local time, Russia fired 30 cruise missiles against different parts of Ukraine, testing the capabilities of Ukraine's air defenses. Ukraine's Air Force said in a statement that 29 of the missiles were shot down, as were 2 exploding drones and 2 reconnaissance drones. Ukrainian forces shot down most of the Russian missiles directed at the region, but falling debris set off fires in several areas, and the missile that got through struck an industrial building in the southern region of Odessa, killing 1 person and wounding 2. The mayor of Kyiv warned people to remain in shelters as falling debris from the shootdown caused fires. There have been no immediate reports of casualties. Overnight, loud explosions sounded throughout Kyiv as Russian forces targeted the capital for the 9th time this month. This was following Ukraine shooting down 6 Russian hypersonic missiles in a single night earlier in the week on Tuesday. Lately, there's been a significant increase in the frequency of missile attacks from Russia. In a separate development, a freight train transporting grain in Russian-occupied Crimea derailed, reportedly due to an explosion. Train services on the affected section of the line have been suspended and no injuries have been reported. The railway operator said the incident was caused by the intervention of third parties and an investigation would be carried out. Meanwhile, G7 leaders are gathering in Hiroshima for discussions on Friday, during which the Russian invasion of Ukraine will be high on the agenda. According to a U.S. official, the latest U.S. sanctions would cut off roughly 70 entities from Russia and other countries from receiving U.S. exports by adding them to the commerce blacklist. And there will be upwards of 300 new sanctions against individuals, entities, vessels, and aircraft. Yoon, Arirang News.
Back on the local front, Korea's space rocket Nuri is poised to carry actual payloads into space during its 3rd launch next Wednesday. Our Choi Seong has more on the 8 satellites.
South Korea's aerospace history will be rewritten on May 24th. The Nuri Space Rocket's 3rd launch is completely different from the 2 previous ones. The 1st and 2nd launches in October 2021 and June 2022 were test launches with dummies, but this time is the first operational launch carrying 8 actual satellites. So, which satellites will be on board? First, the largest and heaviest main payload satellites, next-generation small satellites the 2nd, made by KAIST, will be placed at the front of the 3rd stage of Nuri. It has a main camera with a resolution of 5 meters, an observation width of 40 kilometers, and weighs 150 kilograms to help it explore 600 to 800 kilometers of mission altitude ranges. It uses an imaging radar that is not affected by light or clouds, day and night, or even severe weather conditions.
NextSat, the 2nd, is primarily a satellite that captures radar images. It is a synthetic satellite that sends radar waves and detects the return waves to create composite images. It differs from the optical camera images and has differences in performance compared to the existing Arirang 5 satellite due to its scale.
4 Doyosat, named after small but fast birds, developed by the Korea Astronomy and Space Science Institute, will also be on board. It is also known as SNIPE, small-scale magnetospheric and ionospheric plasma experiment, the world's very first, where 4 satellites fly in formation to observe space weather. 4 nanosatellites, Garam, Nare, Seoul, and Laon, about 10 kilograms each, will provide real-time transmission of fine space plasma distribution, Earth's magnetic field, solar wind, and space storms at a mission altitude of 500 kilometers. In this 3rd launch, the achievements of Korean satellite manufacturing companies are noticeable. The space radiation detector by Lumir, the optical payload by JustTech, and the polarimetric camera by Space will perform their respective missions. In particular, Space's CUBE satellites will come back to Earth automatically without space debris after the mission is complete. These 8 satellites will be a milestone for Korea as a space powerhouse, venturing into space with the country's cutting-edge technology. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
And in other news, a new type of rice flour looks to emerge as a potential solution to better tackle the challenge of surplus rice here in Korea. Our Lee Soo-jin explains.
South Korea has come up with a new type of rice flour. It's called karumi, and it could be the answer to the nation's excess rice issue. The average amount of rice consumed per person in the country last year fell to a record low of 56.7 kilograms, around half of what was consumed 30 years ago. To address this, the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs is planning to promote the usage of karumi, or rice flour, the world's first that doesn't require water.
Normally, rice needs to be soaked in water overnight so it can be ground into fine powder. This not only requires a large amount of water, but nutrients may also be lost.
This type of rice flour, however, produced from a mutant variety of rice developed by the Rural Development Administration, has a starch structure similar to that of wheat, allowing it to be dry milled.
If rice is dry milled, it can save production costs and the quality of the starch remains intact. So when the bread is made with this flour, it remains gluten-free and chewy.
This bakery, located in Sejong, is one of the 9 in the nation that uses more than 1 ton of karumi. The baker takes the rice flour and whisks it into the mixer along with the same ingredients that are added when baking with wheat. The ratio of egg whites to yolk for cake rolls, however, is 50-50, which requires more heating. The dough is then placed in the oven without the addition of gluten. The wide variety of bread made using karumi has been received well by customers.
People say that karumi bread is easier to digest and that it's chewy. It also has a soft texture.
There are still several barriers to overcome before karumi can be commercialized. Its price, in particular. The head baker pays nearly $70 for one 20-kilogram bag. As of December 2022, a 20-kilogram bag of regular rice costs just under half that. The Agricultural Ministry, however, says that it has begun mass production of karumi, which will ultimately lower prices. The government is thus hopeful that this innovative rice flour may soon not only become widespread domestically, but become a major export item. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News, Sejong.
Seoul is conducting a public poll to decide on the design of its new city slogan, Seoul My Seoul. The online poll began last Saturday and will run until the end of this month. Those interested can visit the Seoul City website to make their choice for design from 4 final candidates. The chosen design will undergo additional fine-tuning before being officially unveiled in the second quarter of this year. The slogan Seoul My Seoul was selected via a similar vote in March.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In the United States, Montana has become the first state to ban the popular short video sharing platform TikTok. Governor Greg Gianforte signed the bill on Wednesday. He said to protect the personal data of Montana residents from the Chinese Communist Party. It's been alleged that TikTok's parent company has close ties to Beijing and that the app collects users' private data for use by the Chinese government. The new law will begin in January next year. It will ban app stores from offering TikTok within the state with a potential fine for violators of up to $10,000 per day. TikTok could also be hit with similar fines if it continues to operate within the state. But it's unclear how this will be enforced. Individual users, however, will not be fined. TikTok has responded, calling the ban unlawful. It's promised to defend the rights of its users to continue using the app in the state. Turning over to Colombia now, rescue teams are desperately searching for 4 children believed to have survived a plane crash. Search teams on Wednesday reportedly found a makeshift shelter and items belonging to the children in the thick Colombian jungle. The find generated initial confusion as Colombian President Gustavo Petro on the same day tweeted that the children had been found alive. He deleted his tweet a short time later as reports of their discovery were unconfirmed. The ages of the children range between 13 years and just 11 months. They were aboard a small plane on May 1st along with their mother, a pilot and a co-pilot when the crash occurred. None of the adults survived. In sports news, tennis legend Rafael Nadal has withdrawn from the French Open. The 22-time Grand Slam champion made the announcement Thursday, citing a hip injury. The injury came during a second-round Australian Open defeat in January, which Nadal said is taking longer than expected to heal. The 36-year-old added he will be away from the sport for the next few months, and that 2024 is likely to be his final year playing professional tennis. He said that he plans to return in September for the Davis Cup finals. Known as the King of Clay, Nadal has previously won the clay court French Open 14 times. And finally, remarkable video from Turkey circulating on social media shows a sofa seemingly gliding through the air during a storm. Strong winds sent the furniture hurtling into the sky from the balcony of a high-rise building on Wednesday as heavy rains and storms hit the Turkish capital of Ankara. Local reports say the sofa landed in the garden of the person filming the video and remained in one piece. The storms also blew off roofs and windows and uprooted trees. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Those of us in the western parts of the country are having summer heat again. Not to mention, as for the capital region, we didn't get much relief from the heat yesterday, so it is as hot. While those on the East Coast are having much lower daytime highs due to easterly winds. And further west, stronger sunshine is beaming down with higher UV rays. The sun's rays are strongest between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., so limit exposure to the sun during these hours if you can, and sun protection is a must. Meanwhile, ozone levels will be high in Incheon during the day. Those in Gyeongju are noticing some huge fluctuations in temperatures this week. The area saw daytime highs nearing 35 degrees on Tuesday, but is only getting up to the low 20s this afternoon. And normal to good air quality is expected nationwide all day today. Mostly sunny and warm weekend is in the forecast, but temperatures will go down a few notches from today. Now that's Korea for you. Here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That ends our Friday afternoon newscast. We have our panel session coming up in a few minutes, so do stay with us. Thank you for now.